I've been the money saving expert since 2000. I've been through the financial crash. I've been through COVID. This is the worst. The big drive here is fuel and energy prices. On the 1st of April, energy bills are going to go up 54%. That's £700 a year. As the money saving expert who's been known for this, I am virtually out of tools to help people now.
From a money point of view, the average family will drown.
So with everything that we've talked about, like we said, the headlines, everything we've seen, what Martin Lewis is saying, to the average Joe, seeing all this, what should they do and what do you say to them?
Okay, beautiful. So number one, a bit like Neo when he's unplugged from the Matrix, they got a choice. You know, which colour pill are you going to take? And I think once you've unplugged yourself from the Matrix, once you've unplugged yourself from that total dependency that in some way, shape or form, the state is going to provide for you, you've woken up from that. The next step is to look in the mirror and actually tell yourself and believe the person looking back at you is the person that's responsible for your financial future, because no one else is going to look after you. Nobody. For me, wealth creation, yes, property's my thing, but I'm kind of agnostic about how you want to do it. And I would respect hugely, well, I do respect hugely, people like Warren Buffett. And the way he's become extremely wealthy is through stocks and shares. So the next question you need to ask yourself is, if you want to create real wealth, and let me just explain what I mean by wealth. Wealth is where you've got assets that give you money in exchange for none of your time. If I said to anyone, what's your most valuable asset? They'll say time. If I say to them, what are you shortest of? They'll say money. Because we've all got the same amount of time, haven't we? It's choosing what we do with it. I don't think anybody that's been through a normal education has been taught you need to learn how to acquire assets so that you don't have to exchange your time for money. And I don't know whether you've seen it, and I think it's absolutely right what's said. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. And as an example, they'll quote, for example, slavery. They'll say, you know, for thousands of years, it was completely legal for one human being to literally own another human being. And that was clearly abhorrent, wrong, and all the rest of it. But it was legal, wasn't it? It's been abolished for a couple of hundred years. It was the law for many thousands of years. I think all of us need to be prepared to challenge the status quo, to challenge our thinking, to challenge the system. What's the modern form of slavery? The modern form of slavery is called working for somebody else. Hence the expression wage slave. You can never be truly financially free. You can never be truly wealthy if you're selling your life for money. That's one step removed from being owned by somebody else. It's kind of, you're not owned all the time, you're just owned some of the time. And I get that, and I did it for many years, as long as the thing that you're doing, the work that you're doing, you enjoy. Then I'm completely cool with it. Because now you're getting paid to have fun. So if you talk to Jude, my 13-year-old, and if someone said to him, do you want 20 quid an hour to play Xbox games? He'd be like, yeah, I'm up for that. See what I mean? But if I'm listening to, let's say, the typical person, you know, on an average salary or something, and I ask them questions like, you know, why do you do the job that you do? Just generically, without really knowing what they do. I'll typically get the response, because I have to. So when you're looking at that mirror, accepting responsibility for yourself, I want you to be asking yourself the question, what was I born to do? And for almost all of us, the answer isn't whatever I'm doing now.
I think you make a very good point. I think it's 84% of the UK hate their job.
All right, well, I wasn't aware of the statistics, but intuitively, I would agree. So to go back to your question, what should you do? Well, number one is the awakening, isn't it? That Neo moment, this pill, that pill. Number two is acceptance of responsibility. And that's hard, because we're all conditioned that the NHS, the government, you know, everybody's going to look after us. Here's the thing, they don't. The state has manifestly failed. So if that's not going to work, number three, what are you going to do about it? And if property is your chosen path, and if you want, you know, very top line, why would you do property as opposed to many of the other things? Well, property has got the longest track record of any asset class of going up in value over time, and it's the one that's least volatile. It's the one that's least likely to destroy itself overnight. We've never seen overnight property market collapses of 60-70% like you do with stocks and shares, or it can be even more dramatic with an individual company, can't it? I mean, because you might have £1 million in this particular company and it goes bust. As an asset class, it's very stable. It's also one of the very few asset classes that can be leveraged. So the example I normally use on that is Barclays. Where's it going now? So if you go into Barclays Bank and say, I'd like to take out a mortgage so I can buy some Barclays shares because I've heard they're very good, Barclays just laugh at you. They won't lend you money to buy Barclays shares, will they? Mm-hmm. Because it's not a safe investment. But it's ironic that if you go into Barclays and say, will you give me a mortgage, will you lend me money to buy a house? I don't know if you've ever heard of a Barclays Springboard mortgage, but they'll actually give you a 100% mortgage. There's conditions. You've got to get your mum and dad or whatever to guarantee, or someone to guarantee, but they will give you 100% of the money to go and buy a house, and they will give you 0% of the money to buy Barclays shares. What does that say about their confidence in their own product? And then you could look at other asset classes like, I don't know, gold or diamonds, or increasingly, a lot of people are buying watches, like top-end luxury watches. And so I'm told that there's certain watch brands like Rolex, and then there's certain makes within that, in the last 12 months, the value's doubled. For example, £25,000 watch is now worth 50, or whatever it might be. Big issue with that is physical security. Gold, diamond watches, they could all be nicked, can't they? One of Bernie Ecclestone's daughters, the F1 billionaire guy, one of his daughters got robbed for, I think it was tens of millions of pounds of like jewellery and all sorts of stuff from a fancy London home. I believe that was in 2021, I might be a year out. But my point is, even if you're a billionaire with billionaire level security, you can still have your stuff nicked. And over the years, I've had some houses in, perhaps not the best areas of the likes of Glasgow and that sort of stuff. And even my houses in the roughest areas, I've never had one stolen. Just saying. They've got a long history of going up. They don't go down very often. If they do, it's not very much and not for very long. You can borrow most of the money to buy. You can use other people's money to buy them. They're pretty difficult to nick. And albeit I'll happily accuse our government of incompetence, on an international scale, there's relatively small amounts of corruption. And you can genuinely trust the professionals. I mean, like the lawyers, the accountants, that sort of stuff. Many countries around the world, you can't trust the professionals. You'll transfer your money into a solicitor's account, they'll nick it. Living in the UK, you're thinking, that can't happen, surely. All solicitors around the world are completely trustworthy. You ain't travelled much, sunshine, is what I would say to you. When I compared the asset classes, how do I want to become wealthy? Many, many years ago, I chose property. Step 1, unplug from the machine. Step 2, accept responsibility. Step 3, decide which asset you want to primarily focus on to increase your wealth, because don't do everything. Don't become a day trader, Forex, Amazon dropshipper, crypto. Your brain will explode. Choose something that's going to get you that security, that safety, and then get really good at it. If you want to get really good at property, I can probably help you. If you want to get really good at some of the other asset wealth creation strategies, I can probably help you too, but most of my background is business, tax and property.
Thank you, Paul. Touch a little bit just before we finish this up, because I know that you're very busy. Talk about the government. Obviously we have
one of my favourite subjects.
I thought it might be. Obviously we've got Rishi Sunak's announcement, where he's obviously going for the spring budget. There's lots of talk about stamp duty going up, and the help that will be available to the average Joe, if you like, for predictions, what we're thinking.
Okay, so as we record this, the spring statement was just today. It was out about 10 minutes ago.
Was it? Have you?
I've seen a sneak peek at some of the headlines.
Okay.
I haven't done what I will do, which is read the full detail. So the headlines I saw were that to help people make ends meet, he's announced a cut of 5p in fuel duty, and a litre of petrol, well, depends if it's petrol or diesel, but again, at time of recording, it's around about £1.60, isn't it? Something like that. So 5p, I guess, well, thanks, but in the scale of what it's just gone up by, 40, 50, 60p, it's a fairly small drop in the ocean, but I suppose at least it's a step in the right direction. He's also announced freezes on things like, not freezes, no VAT on green energy improvements. So if you're going to put insulation or solar panels on your house, or air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps, again, I think it's like, I nearly used a rude word, let's call it not very effective. Now, just as an example on that, we refurbish a lot of houses, and I'm thinking about a 6-bedroom house that we refurbished, and one of the things that we needed to do was replace the heating system. It already had central heating and boilers and all the pipe and everything, so to upgrade the system, to get a good EPC rating, an energy performance certificate rating, we could change the boilers and change the radiators and put thermostatic radiator valves on and all that stuff. And that total investment for everything, for a big house, 6-bedroom detached house, 2 boilers, was far too big for, around about £6,000. And that's all done. Okay, we've maybe got access to trade prices and this, that, and the other. Now what we could have done is put ground source heat pumps or air source heat pumps instead of gas central heating. Issue number 1, as a system, it runs a lot colder. It's like 40 centigrade. So you need a huge amount of space. The central heating radiator would need to be approximately 3 times the size. You need 2 more of them. And you have to completely repipe the entire house. So number 1, you've got practical consideration of, can I actually repurpose my house and rip all the floorboards up, and what mayhem that would cause, to allow for the fact that the heating liquid is colder. But then the second consideration is cost. And he sat there thinking, I'm doing the right thing, I'm helping the normal guy. Really? A normal guy or girl that wants to put heating in a house, are they really going to put in air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps? Because do you know how much the quote was for the same house? So central heating, gas central heating, £6,000. Ground source, air source, any idea? 130.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you didn't have to pay the VAT on 130, would you be tempted? Or would you just go for the 6?
I think that's a very good point.
So all this green energy stuff is really for the privileged elite.
Yeah, exactly the point that I was about to make. It doesn't really make any difference to anyone that's actually feeling the true brunt of inflation, you know, and everything that's happening.
If you're doing up some bachelor pad in Chelsea, it might help you save £1 million on VAT. And I just think it reinforces the general perception that everyone in Westminster lives in this crazy bubble, and they all think that it's normal to spend £3 million on a flat or whatever. It's not. That's insanity. So major headline, you know, VAT eliminated on green energy improvement, doesn't help the normal guy. The normal guy isn't going to rush out and put underfloor heating below his Victorian floorboards in a house that he rents, is he? I mean, he's just not going to do it.
No doubt you'll be doing a video once you've actually
seen the full film.
And you've gone through it, and obviously, I mean, where can people watch that when you put it out?
Ah, well, okay, so that'll be on the Touchstone YouTube channel, so get yourself over there and just YouTube, search Touchstone Education, and you'll find us.
Thank you. And, you know, just to round it up, from what you've seen so far of the budget spring announcement, what are your initial thoughts, and into anyone reading through it themselves? From
the context of the average working family, shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic, it's the Titanic is still going to sink. You just might have a slightly better view from the upper deck when you drown. I mean, you will drown. From a wealth point of view, from a money point of view, the average family will drown. And anyone that is just relying on one single income and expecting Rishi or the government or Boris to look after them, you know, they want a check-up from the neck up. They've really got to wake up now, because for the first time in over 30 years, inflation is going to be something that they have to contend with, and they won't have seen it before. Now, I can remember back to the early 80s and even the early 90s when it wasn't unusual for people at work to have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 pay increases a year. Just think about that. And because the cost of stuff is going up so fast, and the things that I did pick up from the headlines that I've seen in the autumn statement, apart from anything else, is that because of the interest rate rises, the cost of the national debt, the cost of the government's debt, has just gone up by billions. So they're in a catch-22 because they want to be able to put up interest rates to try and control inflation. They can't go too far. The first institution that's going to go bust if they put those interest rates up too high is the government itself. And, you know, you heard it here first, unthinkable though it may sound, there's a possibility that the UK might default on its national debt.